Hello, and welcome back to a new episode of the Security Bread podcast. I'm Giorgio, and this is, just a little project of mine where I invite cool people like Graham today, just to have a chat and talk about some stories from the security realm. And the goal is basically to learn something in the process, because I know I'm gonna learn a lot today, and I did in the previous episodes. And today I'm so excited to have Graham. Thank you so much for joining me. And would you like to? Yeah, everyone is gonna know you, but would you like to introduce you?
I don't know if they will. Thank you very much. It's a lovely introduction. My name's Graham Cluley, and I've been working in the field of cybersecurity, although we didn't call it cybersecurity all the way back then. I've been doing this since January 1992, I think it is. So, golly, I'm old. So, over 32 years, extraordinarily. I began my life in cybersecurity writing antivirus software. I used to help write a program called Dr. Solomon's Antivirus Toolkit. And since then, I worked for Sophos for a while. And for the last, more than 10 years, I've been working for myself. So people might know me because I go around giving talks on stage. I write a little bit, and I host a couple of podcasts. One of them is specifically about cybersecurity, called Smashing Security. That's been going for 7 years. The other one is about artificial intelligence, and that's been going for about 7 days. So I've now got 2 podcasts on my wing, but it's all good fun. It's all about telling stories in a way which hopefully people will find accessible, to help them be better protected, better understand technology and the challenges that we face. And that's kind of what I do for a job.
And that's great. And I'm a newbie in your. This is your context, right? And I started this thing just a few years ago, so I'm actually here just to learn a lot from you. And I know that your second podcast is very, very new. So
Yeah.
I invite everyone who is gonna watch it and watch this and listen to this to go check it out.
Well, thank you very much. Neither of my podcasts are as exciting as Security Break. First of all, because there's no video element, so you won't get to see us. It's all in your ears, and we don't do it live like this. This is
Right.
really exciting, because I could go completely hat stand now. I could go nuts, and there it is. There's nothing you can stop me now, Giorgio. Going completely bonkers at this point. But with the podcast that we do, there's a little bit of editing sometimes if we're going to say something slanderous or libelous. But here we are unleashed. So. No, I think it's really cool what you're doing. This is what the kids love. You see, I'm not a granddad, but I'm sort of a veteran of all of this. So all this video and Instagram and TikTok is all a bit of a mystery to me, to be honest.
Just out of context, I consider myself kind of a senior person in my career, and still I was not born when you started.
Thank you very much. Thank you for telling me that. That makes me feel so much better.
I mean, I was actually complimenting you for your long career, but that's okay. So here's the plan for today, right? We collected a bunch of news. I'm going to introduce the first one of them, and we'll just start chatting about it to see what kind of opinions, what kind of consequences, everything that it's interesting to say about it, basically. Just as a reminder, before we actually start, you're watching this live on YouTube, actually LinkedIn and Twitter today, X actually. But this will be still available on YouTube after we will not be live anymore. And if you prefer to just listen to it, this will be also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and whatever. So just decide what you prefer and go check it out. Consider maybe subscribing and share it with a friend if you think it's interesting. Otherwise, I will not be able to convince Graham to join another episode. That said, let's start with the first news of today. I'm gonna share my screen here. This is my screen, and this is the first story we're going to talk about. This is actually, directly from our country, right? This is talking about the NHS, so I think it's the National Health Service from the UK, and it's a recent news that they were actually breached. It's not very clear, but what I understand it's that they were hit by a ransomware as a service, kind of organization, and not only some various hospitals connected to the national service were blocked by the crypto. The encryption itself of the ransomware. They this activity was disclosed because the attackers actually published a lot of data referring to patients, and especially I think from like patients that were that did some blood tests, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right. The organization which actually suffered the ransomware attack is a blood testing organization called
right.
Synovis, and they provide this service to many, many hospitals, parts of the National Health Service here in the United Kingdom. So I actually had to go to the doctor on Monday and I had a blood test. They take a little prick in your arm, they take a little file of blood and they send it off somewhere to go and have a look at it and come back with the results. Now, the company which does that, which does the examination of the blood, they're the ones who got hit by the ransomware. And it's basically crippled their systems. They're no longer able to do that essential work. And it is, of course, essential work. And as a consequence, there are hospitals who can't do operations, people who need treatment, people who were expecting to go under surgery, who were told, I'm sorry, we can't do your potentially life-saving surgery next week as we planned because of this ransomware attack which has happened. And the attack has been perpetrated by a ransomware as a service gang, as you said, called, I think it's pronounced Chilin. It's QILIN, which is I think it's the name is of a beast from Chinese mythology, a kind of half dragon, half unicorn kind of thing. It's crazy where they get these names from. I have no idea, but this is a group which has been attacking a number of organizations. Obviously, health services are regarded as a bit of a soft touch because typically you have lots and lots of computers, lots of systems, and, well, I don't know about it in your country, but certainly in our country, the health service is not well funded. They don't have lots and lots of money. The money which they have, they're using to try and keep people alive. It's not always been invested into complicated cybersecurity protection and expensive things like that. They're not necessarily on top of that. It's a very, very difficult kind of organization to protect, all these organizations. And
I think we lost you for a second. Hopefully I'm still
essential
live here.
To British life.
Okay. We just lost you for a second, but I think we got most of the information you were providing in there. Hopefully you are able to see and hear me. All right.
Are we back? What happened there?
Yeah, I think you're back.
Can you sorry about that. Sorry about that. Must have been a ransomware gang messing around with our broadband or something like that.
Yeah, this is part of doing live streaming. It happens. It's okay. It's totally okay.
Okay, and, well, I'm back, folks.
Yeah. It's well, just to remind everyone, we mentioned a couple of times ransomware as a service. What we mean is basically an organization who is basically building the infrastructure and the software to run a ransomware operation. So where you infect, a network or a company, and then block the entire systems, and then ask for a ransom in order to, give them back their systems, basically. And it's this organization is giving out their infrastructure to any third parties who want to just pay and use their infrastructure. So that said, of course, this is very big news because it's impacting the healthcare environment, which we all know it's
Mm,
definitely a high risk environment. But I want to point the focus on something very specific, right? The kind of data that were published were actually patient data, right? Not
mm,
from the company itself, even though it's a national service right now. And we had some previous stories where the same data were then possibly used to go to the actual individual people, right? And maybe ask them for a ransom as well, because there could be definitely some sensitive information, like if you did the blood test because you maybe had the HIV
right.
or some other disease, it could be very
Yeah.
sensitive, and maybe you don't want to you want that to be public, right?
There's certainly
I
that
mean, this is
potential
a
with.
guess.
No, I think it's quite plausible. Apparently, yeah, some of the data which has been stolen does include the results of these blood tests. So if you were suspected of having a sexually transmitted disease of some kind, that could now be in the hands of hackers. And you're right, we have seen this kind of thing in the past. There was, for instance, an attack in Finland a few years ago where a hacker stole data from a chain of mental health therapy clinics, and then not only tried to extort money from the clinics, but also went to the individual patients saying, unless you pay me so many Bitcoin, I am going to release your private information onto the web. And obviously, that's the last thing you want to hear, least of all if you're suffering from mental health problems, that some hackers doing that is absolutely abominable. But that potential is there. Whether in this particular case the hackers would go to that effort or not, I don't know. I suspect they're probably concentrating at the moment on simply trying to get a ransom payment from the NHS, from Synovis, from the UK government. Don't know that they're going to be successful though.
Mm.
I think we're increasingly seeing organisations showing some real resilience to these kind of threats, and they may well be thinking, well, if we pay up, it's just going to encourage more attacks in the future, and maybe we'll just risk the fact that this data is going to become public. But it's always a very difficult decision for an organisation as to whether to pay a ransom or not. And I wouldn't criticise a group for either doing it or not doing it. I think those are difficult shoes to stand in.
Yeah, especially when there are actually potential lives at stake here.
Yeah,
So yeah, you're definitely right. Even though, let's always just as a reminder, paying a ransom doesn't really insure you about anything. Of course, you're still dealing with criminals, but
yeah,
yet there are some very special scenarios where you have to consider every possibility.
yeah.
um,
It turns out some criminals can't be trusted, so you may well pay them, and they'll be back in 2 weeks and trying it again, potentially.
right, yeah.
Or another, or they may pose as a different ransomware group. They may not want to appear to be the same one again, because obviously then people think, oh, I should never pay those guys because they just come back 3 weeks later. But if you came back pretending to be a different ransomware group, then maybe you could try and extort more money. I don't know. Don't want to give anyone any ideas here.
I mean, later on they could actually have the leverage of the publication of data, right? Maybe they were just threatening to do so, and then we don't know if they really shared everything they had. They could say something like, we shared 50% of the data we have, and if you don't pay right now, we're going to share the rest. So they definitely have processes in place in order to ensure that at some point the company will pay something, maybe not the entire amount, but still
Yeah.
they can
So the
gain some.
latest I've heard is that there is 400 gigabytes of sensitive patient data which has been released, and Synovis has confirmed it is data from them. So although maybe the most sensitive information may not have been accessed at this point, there certainly is some sensitive information there, and it's not the kind of thing you want swilling around on the dark web, which fraudsters and cyber criminals might attempt to take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is probably the worst scenario ever, or one of the worst for course, of course. And even though I really think the worst position is the one of the individual patients, right
Yeah,
here, we still have to think about the entire um, healthcare infrastructure is still trying to recover from the encryption. And there's another part of it that is specified in the article, the fact that of course they also have to reinsure all the people and to communicate exactly what kind of risk they are going to face for this event. And they are actually struggling to set up something in order to communicate effectively and efficiently with everyone potentially in the UK, right?
yeah,
Because we don't really know how many people or how many hospitals were actually affected with this. And that's it's an additional problem that is coming in this. Just to give an idea of what it can happen in such scenarios. It's really bad. We really hope for them to recover as soon as possible. But as you said, unfortunately, the budgets are not the greatest, and it really takes a lot of efforts also for, let's say, the private and normal companies. So yeah, let's really hope for the best. Um, is there anything else that is in your mind regarding this news, Graham? Before we
I think
change
just to underline the point you've just made there as well is that it can be very difficult sometimes to work out who is actually affected. If you think of the typical organization, the typical company, they might struggle to know how many computers they have, how many servers they have connected to the network. That's a huge issue for any organization of a certain size. Like, well,
let me correct you. They always struggle. Believe me, always.
right. They don't have a clue. It's like we don't know what's connected to our network. So if they can't tell what legitimate computers are connected to their network and how many legitimate servers they have, imagine the struggle they have saying, well, how many customers do we actually have? Or how many people whose data do we have? And how do we contact them? And where might that information be stored? And it's a real nightmare.
Yeah, it's a mess. And it specifies somewhere in the news also that the actual recording that were stolen potentially are from years ago, right? So it's not
Yes.
about what current customers or current patients we have right now. It's about the last few, I don't know, 5-10 years. We don't really know. Probably we will never know. But
And people will have moved. Some people will have changed their email addresses. Their phone number will have changed, etc., etc. Good luck telling everyone that there might be a risk. And what are they actually meant to do with that information anyway? Well, how
yeah,
are they meant to actually protect themselves from that information being exploited and abused? I don't know.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first step will definitely be to make them aware of it,
Mm,
because it's even worse if they don't know it. But still, you're perfectly right that still they really need to ensure that they are doing everything it's their possibilities, and for give them some suggestions on how to protect them, even though there's no it's basically too late.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, the other thing I'd call for, sorry to keep,
no,
I mean,
that's
I know
that's
you
okay.
want to move on to other stories and things, but the other thing which I'd mention here is I really would love to see governments funding our healthcare services better, because public healthcare providers, they typically have got this really dangerous cocktail of complex IT systems mixed with limited budgets.
Right.
So, so there's a real struggle for them as to how they are supposed to protect themselves. They are an essential part of our country's infrastructure. So they need to be properly defended, because if the hospitals get hit by ransomware, if they can't do operations, that is a huge problem. So we need
Absolutely.
them to be properly defended. We cannot blame the IT guys who work in these hospitals, because typically they're really under resourced. So we need governments, we need the authorities to properly fund them. And we as the public need to be comfortable with our governments spending a lot of money to protect our healthcare organizations.
Yeah, and that's probably also true for any other critical infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
That's probably true for anything for transportation, or even energy and gas. sort of companies who are the first providers for a country. So yeah, I feel every country is really struggling with that, of course,
Hmm.
but that's especially true when it comes to healthcare, unfortunately, right? But yeah, hopefully this era that we just spent, the last 10 years, we know what is possible to happen, right? And hopefully we will have some developments in this with this goal in mind, let's say. um,
I like your optimism, Giorgio. I like your optimism.
I mean, I work in this environment, so I'm really hoping for me to still have a job in other 10 years, let's say like that. Cool. So that said, we're going to move to the next news. We have another couple of news to talk about. And just as a reminder, I see, some people watching us live. Thank you so much for that. Once again, if you're liking what you see and what you listen to, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and sharing with a friend. And also, you add the comments in there. No matter what kind of platform you're using. So please use that so I can, take a look at those comments and maybe we can all have a conversation all together. Um, so let's say let's move to the next news today, and it's been a while that I actually talk about crypto on this podcast, which is says something. Probably AI it's replacing the coolest subject out there in the technology world, but here we have something new. We're talking about the I think one of the probably biggest crypto exchange out there, which is Kraken, and they actually suffered from like some sort of extortion, some sort of scam, I would say. It's difficult to really give terms to these kind of things. So this company, as many others in the field, they have what we usually call a bug bounty program, right? So it means that they welcome any third-party researchers, pen tester, or red teamers, or depending on what you want to call them, to basically test their public technologies and try to find some vulnerabilities, right? And they will actually pay them something when they provide a report, when they disclose, oh, you have this kind of vulnerability, it can be exploited like this, and it can be a risk that you can maybe patch in this way. But something curious happened recently when a so-called security researcher first disclosed a vulnerability to Kraken, and then the security team of Kraken actually found out that some I'm trying to understand from the news, which is not very clear for me, but maybe it's just the story which is curious. Some people collect connected to the security researcher actually exploited the vulnerability to steal something like $3 million from the exchange, and they basically said, we're not going to give you back the money if you don't pay us the bug bounty before. So I mean, it's confusing. We of course have some public statements from the company and from the security researchers, and everyone of course is kind of backing themselves with their own version of the story. But I mean, I'm curious to see what are your thoughts about this, because it's really an interesting story.
It's bizarre, and it's worth checking out the thread which was posted by the guy from Kraken. His name is Nick Percoco. I'm not sure if he's the founder of Kraken or not, because the story starts strange and it just gets stranger and stranger. At first, you think, oh, this is fairly normal. They've been told about a vulnerability through their bug bounty program. Presumably, they'll investigate the bug, they'll fix it, and the researcher will get some dollars or however much to protect themselves. And then it becomes this extortion scam, um, which I am baffled. I don't know what on earth is going on here. Is the guy who initially reached them, who isn't named in this thread, is he a legitimate security researcher or not? That's unclear. According to Kraken, and we have to remember this is mostly being told to us from Kraken's point of view. According to them, this researcher told two friends about the vulnerability. Like you do, you go down the pub and you say, hey, I'll tell you about a vulnerability in a cryptocurrency exchange. Maybe you want to go and check it out. And they took all this money. They took millions of dollars and are saying, well, let's start negotiating what our bug bounty will be. It's like, no. What you do, if you find a vulnerability, maybe, in a cryptocurrency exchange, maybe what you do is you take a small token amount. Maybe you take $5 or something. That proves the point. You don't need to take millions of dollars to prove the point. And it just fundamentally seems like extortion to me. At least this is from Kraken's point of view. Now, maybe the security researchers got a totally different opinion as to how the conversation went and what other communications may have happened. I don't know. I don't have any insight into that. But I have to say, so many of these cryptocurrency exchange and blockchain companies and the rest of it seem to get hacked on such a regular basis and have vulnerabilities and flaws. The last thing I want to do is take a whole wheelbarrow load of cash and dump it at the floor of a cryptocurrency site, because who knows what's going to happen to it? Who knows, first of all, you're going to get scammed in the first place, or who knows if there's going to be some dumb vulnerability, which means that you never see your money again. If regular high street banks act like this, we'd all be keeping money under our mattresses, wouldn't we, rather than in bank accounts. So it's just another sign of cryptocurrency is this thing which exploded like a shooting star. It came along so quickly. Everyone jumped on the bandwagon, hoping to make themselves millions. And many companies got involved in crypto as well, but they didn't always do the due diligence of properly ensuring that their system was rock solid and couldn't be exploited. So regardless of whatever these researchers have done with their threats in order to get their bounty paid, it just continues this background radiation noise of being very, very skeptical of anything to do with cryptocurrency.
Definitely agree with that. I mean, we had a long list of similar stories, actually. I mean, exchange being breached or other type of scams and, money laundering for some of them. There's a lot of stuff that really, if you read them, and you should definitely, you should be at least a little skeptical about it, about all of the industry, honestly. But yeah, I don't have any. I mean, any company is facing, of course, security risks. They are definitely a high reward target for many different, criminals out there. What I'm really most focused on right now for this story is the thing that it's such a pity that something, something like a bug bounty program, which should be a good thing.
Yeah.
We in the industry are really pushing for every company to do something like this. Is then exploited, right, by so-called, security researchers to basically do some sketchy stuff, even sketchier than what the company is doing, honestly, right now. That's really a pity to hear. And I hear already so many companies reading this and thinking, oh, I'm gonna remove my bug bounty program because this is something that could happen.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope
Right?
that doesn't happen. It is a worry. I mean, these people who allegedly took $4 million, you have to wonder, are these legitimate security researchers, or are they your typical cyber criminal who've basically stolen the money and are then thinking, well, we can either run off with the money and hope to launder it somehow and hope that the law doesn't catch us, or maybe now we've got the money, the safest thing to do is actually monetize the theft by saying, pay us the bug bounty, and then you won't send the law after us. It's legitimate researchers can't do this. They can't behave in this way. If what Kraken have said is accurate, and I don't know if it is, but if it is accurate, then clearly this isn't something which should be encouraged.
So the other interesting thing about this is that Kraken didn't disclose who who was the alleged security researcher, but another company in the meanwhile started, talking about the same event,
Yes.
which is certic, and apparently it should be some sort of legit security for blockchain and crypto company, right? So apparently they do this as their mainly job, right? They do bug bounty. I've seen their size in there. They specifically say they do something like that. So if these two different entities are talking about the same thing, once again, if anything like this is happening and anyone is thinking about hiring some company to do some tests on their blockchain, honestly, this could be kind of a problem to consider, right? That's something that everyone has to think about.
Yeah,
um,
it's interesting that Certic have emerged in this story. I've just shared privately with you, Giorgio, a link to a story if you want to put it up on screen. I don't know if you have that ability, but in January of this year, Certic, they actually had their Twitter account hijacked. So they've been the victims of cyber criminals themselves. So if they're finding vulnerabilities, they've actually been tricked by scammers. I think the scammer posed as a Forbes journalist, pretending that they were going to interview their CEO, and then managed to grab some passwords or such like. But it's what a tangled web we weave. It would certainly be interesting to see what Certic has to say about this, whether they are associating themselves with this $4 million transaction or not. But it's we don't need this kind of shadiness around bug bounties, do we? They really should be whiter than white.
Yeah. By the way, I just pushed your link in the chat for everyone to
Oh,
be able
thank you.
to see that. And as another reminder, all of the articles we are talking about today, they are all going to be in the description. So do your own research, just not blindly trust what we're saying, of course, and have a look at those. I think that's that. I should encourage everyone to have their own research, and maybe if you read something that we didn't take the chance to talk about, just let us know in the comments below. Yeah, well, I'm thinking there was something else I did want to mention about this, but I just forgot about it right now, so that's that's kind of fine. So the thing, it's everything about bug bounties here, and I really hope that this kind of news does not discourage companies to consider to even set up new bug bounties programs, because there's a lot of good stuff that comes from those programs right there. And we also have some big events happening where people and researchers are challenged to find new vulnerabilities on some of the most popular and biggest products out there. We have spoken about this in some of the previous episodes. So it's
And
not.
one
Yeah.
And one other thing I'd say to the audience is, if you want to participate in a bug bounty, if you want to find vulnerabilities in a company's products or services, read the rules of the bug bounty first. Don't think that the mere existence of a bug bounty means you can do anything that you like, because you
Right.
can't, right? You can't launch a DDoS attack against a website unless they've specifically said, please test our website to see if it can stand up against a DDoS attack or something. That would be completely inappropriate for you to do. Similarly, you can't breach a bug bounty program's rules by ignoring, trying to extort money out of them, or taking money from customers' accounts and, without the customer's permission. So you need to play within the rules. Otherwise, you are at risk of just being basically labeled a cyber criminal.
Right. That's actually exactly what I wanted to mention before. Thank you for that. And I'll add just a bit to that. I'm really sorry to hear something like this, because honestly, I really hope this is an actual criminal and not some legit company. Because honestly, we are living a great industry where you can definitely make money out of it legitimately, right? There are so many different ways, bug bounties included. So this is, for me, just an act of being greedy, right? While you're doing allegedly your job. And I just don't want this for my own industry. So I hope this could be a message to push for ethical, ways to make money. We are doing money. We are making money. We are doing this for work. Definitely, we are paying to do this, and I don't see why, just out of being greedy, we should go to the dark side of the thing. There's no reason to do that. So please don't. Cool. So if that's okay for you, I'm gonna push and move to the last news for today, unfortunately, which I think, I always do this thing where which the one that I think is the biggest or just the most important news, I push it at the end of it, and it does give the number to the name, to the title, to the episode, right? And what we're going to talk about, it's actually the recent ban that the U.S. government finally, because we're talking about this from years, honestly, but apparently it's official now. They are banning Kaspersky software to be sold in the United States. For everyone who doesn't know about this, Kaspersky is a Russian-based, very well-known security company. I think it's probably one of the oldest one in the industry. They were known for an antivirus software, which is mentioned in the article, but they actually sell a lot of different products and services nowadays. And of course, for the main reason here is that it's based in the Russian country, and even though they are providing from many years different ways to legitimize their products, their software, in many different ways, still, of course, I kind of understand it. The U.S. government feels it's safer to just ban the software in the entire country. Now, this is for me a very interesting topic, not only for the current status and situation, and of course it's very, very risky, and I understand a government taking this decision right now. The thing is, for a decision of a government, we don't really know how many different companies, small ones, big ones, and even it's specified that some of them are critical infrastructures, are actually relying on Kaspersky software to secure their environments. And right now they have just less than a month to actually move to something else. And everyone who works in security or IT knows that just changing a service provider, it's a mess. It takes a lot of time, and you really want to do it right. Otherwise, it can be not that safer if you don't really secure everything you have in your infrastructure and you do it in the correct way. So my first question will be, what do you think will be the impact of this on the actual companies, right?
So one thing just to correct you on that is Kaspersky can't be sold to American businesses and consumers after July 20th, but the security updates, the updates, the antivirus definitions, they're going to carry on until September the 29th. So there's a little bit longer, even if you can't go out into the shops or can't buy a site license of Kaspersky after, like 3 or 4 weeks time from now. So you do have a little bit longer. I think this won't come as any surprise to government organizations, because I think the US government has been banning the use federally within federal organizations of Kaspersky for some time. This has now just broadened out basically to all businesses as a result. But you're absolutely right. This is going to be incredibly disruptive to organizations to rip out one antivirus, which has been carefully configured, and not just antivirus, there are other tools as well, carefully configured for particular networks. They're going to have to evaluate new products. They're going to have to put them in place. And think of those poor companies, American companies, who earn a living selling and supporting Kaspersky software, who've now got customers who are saying, you've sold us something that isn't going to update us isn't going to protect us after the end of September. You need to come in and fix our problem, and don't expect us to pay you any money for this because we've already paid you for Kaspersky. So what are those companies going to do? They're going to feel it in their pockets as well. This is really a problem both from the technological point of view, but also financial point of view. And I have to be honest with you, I'm not sure why this is happening. I've never seen any evidence that Kaspersky's products do anything naughty, do anything which anybody else's security products do, right? We all work the same kind of way. If we see a suspicious file, we may well upload it to the labs for analysis, etc., etc., do that kind of analysis and put them down again. So I feel some real sympathy. I've known Eugene Kaspersky for years and years. I don't know him well, but I've met him several times over the years, and I have friends who work for Kaspersky. And I thought for a while, I wonder how long your job's going to last, because you're going to be finding it more and more difficult to sell your software, not only in America, but in other countries as well, which are following America's lead when it comes to Kaspersky. So I have sympathy for them, because it is really an accident of birth that Eugene Kaspersky was born in Russia rather than somewhere else. But at the same time, it is true that the Russian authorities could influence Kaspersky to do something naughty. And if their software is running on lots of critical computers around the world, there is potentially, it may be a small risk, but there is the potential that something bad could happen from it. But it seems strange to me that there's so much focus. So I accept that is a genuine risk. And I can understand why American government may say, well, don't use the Russian antivirus software any longer. Use this American antivirus software or European antivirus software, not realizing that most American antivirus software and European antivirus software is largely written by Russians anyway. If you go into the programming departments, all the real geeky guys are Eastern Europeans and Russians doing the really complicated stuff. Trust me, I've been in those coding laboratories. That's where many of these guys are from. But anyway, but we as a world are completely reliant on technology coming from China. We're reliant on microprocessors. We're reliant on software. We're all doing our, well, I'm not, but lots of people are doing their TikToks. But, you know, there is so much of our technology. And when you actually look to see where was this thing made, it was made in China. So are we going to, in the future, say, well, we're not going to have any of that either? Because if that's the case, who's going to make stuff in the future? And what's to stop the Russians and the Chinese and other countries saying, well, we don't want any European software on our systems, because we in Europe could just as easily do it to China or Russia as they could do it to us. So it does set a bit of a precedent, and I don't think we should be surprised if there's some fallout from this. It's all very, very unfortunate, because, as I said, the guys who work at Kaspersky, I know, are great guys. They really know their stuff. They've got a good product, but they are based, or at least they're headquartered in Russia. Eugene Kaspersky is a Russian.
Right.
It's plausible. It's plausible.
I mean, you touched multiple different and very interesting topics in there. Well, first of all, I also know some people working for generally Russian companies, right? Russian security companies. There are many of them, and very, generally professional and very skilled people in there who were affected in a way or another by the current situation, just because they work, let's say, for a company that it's started in that country in there. And it's really a pity to hear about this. And you mentioned this already, but of course, this is about risk more than responding to an incident. Of course, when it comes to national security, you really want to try to prevent activities, and for that reason, risk management is a lot on let's consider what kind and how big the risk could be in case something like this happens. And as you said, I do also understand that there's a risk involved with this. because if this is not clear for everyone, we're talking about a company building a technology that is being installed on every single endpoint, every single computer that any company buying this solution is in their network. So it means that, and by the way, the scope, the goal of that product, of that software, is actually to monitor what's happening on the computer in order to find out about compromises. So that's its goal. The point is that it's kind of legitimate to think that potentially, even if of course we don't have any evidence of this right now, potentially everything that is being monitored can be also monitored and collected for all the reasons which are not the most legit ones. So that's the reason why this is happening. What I'm a little surprised about is that we have seen the U.S. governments declaring something similar in the past. When it came to 5G technology, we had a lot of war against the Chinese technology and everything.
Yes.
But right now, this is not about Russian companies. This is about Kaspersky in particular.
Yeah.
And I understand it's probably the most important security company for that for that specific industry and field and type of product. But still, this is very, very specific. And of course, there are going to be potentially other political reasons behind this, and we cannot really do anything about that. But of course, we have to take it into consideration. I feel like anyway, at the end of the story, the individual companies are the ones who are really mostly affected by this, because as you say, they did an investment. They maybe just bought the solution for, I don't know, 3-5 years. The last month, okay, and maybe they spent even potentially millions of dollars on something like this, depending on how big your network is. And right now they're being told, oh, you have to change it right now. Like
Yeah.
you have until September, and they're still trying to install everything in their environment. I know this. It's really a struggle for implementing a new technology, and especially migrating to something else. And I don't envy them for sure.
And security software runs at such a low level on your computer. It's not like changing the program you use to create your graphics or something like that, your PowerPoint presentations. It's not like that. It's something really low level, which if you do rip it out and replace it with something else could really bugger things up. So you want something that's going to work. So I was wondering, well, who actually benefits from this news? And the sad truth is the people who benefit are Kaspersky's rivals.
Of course.
Because some of them are putting up their blog posts right now saying, if you want to switch from Kaspersky, here's how you do it, and offering special deals. And you can imagine how the salespeople are hitting the phones. And the little conspiracy theorist in my head I wonder whether over the last few years, there's been whispers into the ears of politicians over in America from lobbying groups and so forth saying, oh, you shouldn't trust Kaspersky, You shouldn't trust them because they're Russian. Shouldn't you be supporting the American antivirus companies like blah and blah and blah instead? And whether that may have had some influence on that. I really hope that the security companies who haven't been hit by this kind of problem, the non-Kaspersky companies at the moment, so they haven't seen this sort of problem yet, I really hope that they haven't been taking advantage of this too much and haven't been exploiting this too blatantly, because the boot could be on the other foot in future. It could be any of the other security companies which gets hit next time with some suggestion from some other country that, oh, we can't trust McAfee anymore. We can't trust Trellix, Symantec, whoever it might be anymore because they're in America and they could do this to our systems. I don't think that's good for anyone in this world.
I mean, I probably will just say that I will not count on that. I mean, if I know, I'm in the industry, so I know how every opportunity is a good one, unfortunately, to try to sell your own product. So, I will not count on that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And, I just want to keep pushing on a specific thing that you said before, right? That it's actually a very intrusive software we're talking about, right?
Mm.
And if I had to think the wrong way, right? I'm a security guy. I need to try to think like the attacker, they say. And if I really have to think that maybe Kaspersky is doing something not very legit for any reason in there, right? And they're being said, "Oh, you're going to lose all of your US customers right now." So if you are really a malicious actor, you are actually thinking, "Oh, I'm actually going to lose all of that intelligence from that country that is bad," and I can still push some updates. By the way, I'm not suggesting this. I'm not, I don't have any evidence. I'm just guessing, the worst scenario. I can still push an update that push a backdoor or something, and I'm still gonna be in there listening to everything. So this is not something that will really prevent any real, national security threat from my point of view. I know this is, idle, maybe too many guesses, right?
No, I can see. I mean, it's an interesting balancing act, isn't it, for the authorities? Because from the pure national security point of view, you could argue we are going to stop updates today, right? We're not going to pre-announce it. We're not going to give people 3 months notice. There will be no more updates from today. But of course, that introduces its own security issue, because
Right.
now you have computers which aren't being protected by antivirus, albeit of Russian origin. So it's like, well, what's safer? Is it safer to have the Russian antivirus protecting us, or no antivirus at all? It's interesting. The other interesting thing I think is, let's not forget that I think it was last year or maybe the year before, Kaspersky discovered a malware attack, an operation called triangulation, which actually exploited some vulnerabilities, I think, in iPhones to read people's messages. And the way Kaspersky found it was they were targeted with triangulation. And so they documented it. They worked with Apple. They got the problem fixed, etc., etc. The belief is that the triangulation malware attack originated from America, from the American authorities who were wanting to spy on Kaspersky. No other antivirus company had found that vulnerability and protected against it. So it could be that the Americans are a little bit upset that vulnerabilities they've been exploiting were stopped by the Russians, which prevented them, of course, from using that same vulnerability against other people of interest to them as well.
You make me think about the one blog post that I was reading some months ago, which was very interesting, and it was analyzing how for any reason most of our biggest security companies, especially the one doing threat intelligence, right, and actually identifying those big malicious campaigns out there, most of them are American companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are, of course, identifying, Asian or Middle East based malicious campaigns, right? And we had historically, right, a lack of anything coming from the West, right? Which is not really, everyone has an intelligence
Yes.
department, right? So that said, it means that we actually need someone from the other side of the world doing the same kind of intelligence if we really want to be as secure as possible, or as aware as possible of anything happening to them in there that is really affecting our companies, right? Otherwise, we are only preparing for half of the potential attacks out there.
Yep. That's
So
true.
I feel that that's another very big impact that we are having if we are trying to shut. I don't mean to say shut down, but limit the possibilities of non-American based security companies, if that makes sense.
What a crazy world we live in.
You're completely right, but that's what it is. That's the goal of this format right here. Just the being aware of something that is happening and understanding the full scope and the consequences or potential consequences. I feel it's the first step, right? Because it's even worse to not really knowing or understanding what's going on out there. And I feel that's a big part of being or working into security, or really being passionate about it. If you are not updated with what's happening out there, if you don't understand what's happening out there, and what could be the impact maybe for you individually or for your organization, you are already starting at a lower point, and it's not a good thing. And hopefully, this little podcast of mine can help a little with that. If anyone listens and participate in this conversation, and I'm so grateful to you for helping me with this. It was a very insightful conversation. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. It's really been good fun. Thanks for having me on.
That's great. So thank you also for everyone who is watching this. Consider rewatching if you maybe lost the first part of it. You can still do this on the YouTube channel, and maybe if you like this, subscribe, and I'll see you later in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.